In today's video, we will be screening in our back patio. This is a project that we wanted to tackle since purchasing the home. I started this project in the wintertime since I know that in the southern half of Texas, bugs can get pretty bad during the summer. The goal is to be able to enjoy our back patio without being attacked by bugs non-stop. I started off the project by framing up where the screens will be. To do this, I'm using pressure-treated 2x4s. To keep everything clean and to allow me to easily make connections between the framing pieces, I'm using a pocket hole jig. I got this jig a while back for a separate project and I use it all the time. I'll be framing around the current outdoor kitchen area. To do this, I have to notch out the 2x4s in some places to get around the countertops. To achieve this, I'm using my cheap little router. While the notches aren't perfect and the fits aren't exact, it's good enough for this project, and I'll be coming back at the end with a significant amount of caulking to make sure that the voids are all closed. The tops of each of these bricked columns have some siding that is going to be in the way of our frame. I used a little reciprocating saw to cut away the pieces that would be infringing on our frame. At the end of the project, I'll obviously come back and clean up these sections to make sure I don't have any gaps that would allow bugs into our screen patio area. Even though I started this project in the colder months, I did still have some problems with bugs during the construction itself. I made sure to have a little electronic swatter to knock down the wasp whenever they came at me while cutting the wood. Along the top, I'm screwing the top plate directly into the eave fascia. I also make sure that all these upper joints are supported by the vertical stringers. So I didn't show it here, but I actually put a few more uprights in that area that I'm calling the backsplash section. This is where I'll be installing a backsplash behind my smoker. I found that the laser level was pretty handy when it came to getting the framing guidelines set so that everything stayed square, not only on the ground, but also at the top of the eave. I'll be installing two doors on our patio. One of them will be 30 inches and the other will be 36. This is all very lightweight, so I'll only put one top plate across the top of the doors. Now this section over here will be the most challenging because there is a 45-degree offshoot from the eave. So what I'm going to do here is cut a little window to allow our framing to pass through. This will make for a fairly tight spot when screening, but we'll tackle that later. Overall, this is how the framing turned out. So now I'll be moving on to the backsplash section. On the back end of the backsplash, we'll be putting up some party board siding. This stuff comes pre-primed, but we will be painting it to match our eaves later. Before tackling the interior, I needed to pass the electrical from where it currently is up to the top section of our backsplash. This will be powering the fan that sits above our smoker. I am not an electrician, and I know this is likely not up to code since there's a little bit of Romex going through this conduit. I want to note that the electrician who was here before me also used Romex and conduit. I'm not saying that that makes it right, but don't do what I do. Don't get hurt by electricity. This is for educational purposes only. In reality, I probably should have purchased some THWN to run through this conduit, but for now, this will have to do. So I got this tile backer board, and this stuff was super expensive. But I was able to do the math and figure out how to use just one board to do this entire project. The negative of doing so is that it required me to cut it into a few sections and kind of have to Tetris it together. It's a super lightweight material and it's easy to cut, but like I said, it's fairly expensive. This is the first time I've ever done anything with tiling, so I'm going to be learning as I go here. I set up a 90-degree barrier on the left. That will be the end of my tiling, and then I'll mix up some tiling mortar in a bucket. Before I started tiling, I went ahead and drilled a hole for our vent pipe to go through, so that I can tile around that hole. I'll be using these little tile sheets and cutting the ends flush with a pair of snips. The nice thing about this is that it doesn't require me to use a tile saw or anything like that to make perfect cuts. I can just use a set of snips to cut these tiles. Now the cuts from the snips aren't perfect, but I found that they were good enough for what I'm doing here on this outside kitchen. I did use some little 3D printed plastic spacers on the vertical sections of these tiles to make sure that I had enough space to throw in some grout after they're all up on the wall. Another nice thing about these tile sheets is that they're easy to cut in between the tiles with a razor blade or a knife. So getting around the holes and the outlets are fairly simple. Once I had them up on the wall, it's time to do some grouting. I mix up the grout using my same electric mixer, and then I started applying the grout to the tiles with a rubber float. I had to purchase all these tools for these projects, and if y'all are interested in any of the tools that I use in this project, go ahead and check that description below for the links. They are affiliate links and they help out the channel, so if you use them, thanks. After I was finished putting up all the grout, I used a sponge with some water to wipe off the excess grout from the face of the tiles. All in all, this came out pretty good. I had a couple of tiny pinholes here and there, and I actually used some caulking to fill those later. The caulking is the same color as the grout and is made by the same manufacturer. Now, I'm not the best at caulking apparently because I made a slight bit of a mess here with the caulking, But this is an outdoor application, and I don't think anyone's going to really be inspecting this work too much behind my smoker. To install the vent hood, I needed to drill some holes through these tiles. I used this little diamond bit, which wasn't fast, but it did get the job done. I screwed in these brackets that came with the vent, and I put the outlet cover on my outlet. Now, one mistake I did make was that the hole I made on the inside was slightly too small. I was able to snake the venting through it, but I got a bigger hole saw for the outside of the hardy board that was the appropriate size. I used this vent for the outside, and I also put some stainless steel mesh along the mouth of the vent to prevent any bugs, especially wasps, from making their homes in there. Once I had the vent attached, I ran the ducting through our holes and connected them to the top of the hood. The last thing I did on this tile was I sealed it with a spray sealant. You basically just spray this stuff on and wipe it off with a rag. The idea here was to give me a little bit of water sealing since it is an outdoor application. Now, before I move on to the screening, while everything is still open, I took my pressure washer out and tried to get the bulk of the dust and pollen off of the walls and the ceiling inside of our patio. I also hired a company to come out and do the painting because I hate painting, and they painted all the framing for around $1,400. So it wasn't cheap, but I hate painting so bad that it felt worth it. They did their best to match the color of the current eaves. Now, to do the screening, we're going to be using this screen-tight tracking system. These are little plastic tracks that the screens will attach to and can actually attach to both sides. So if you have one in the middle, you can attach a screen to both the right and the left side of the same track. They have holes about every 8 inches, but I made sure to put an extra screw through the very end depending on where it was cut. One of the things I found that made this project way easier was getting a set of aviation snips to cut the tracks. This prevented me from needing to measure and cut with a saw. You're able to just cut them with these snips. I got this idea from watching a video from Renovates on YouTube, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. To attach these screen-tight tracks to the 2x4s, I just used some construction screws I used for the framing, but shorter. I started off by using some 2-inch screws because that's what I had, but those are really too long. I ended up transitioning to some of the 1.25-inch screws after I ran out. One thing that's worth noting is that these snips can tear up the edges of your tracks if you're not careful. I found that the piece you want to keep needs to be on the left-hand side. So if the piece you want to keep is on the right, you'll end up getting the tracks folded over and smashed. But if the piece you want to keep is on the left of your cut, you get a nice clean cut. The screens I got were from Pfeiffer at Lowe's. I bought the 72-inch screen, and then I bought the larger one because I have one screen that is larger than 6 feet wide. But all the other screening on the project I was able to do with the 6-foot roll. I got these fairly cheap spline tools from Amazon along with the appropriate size spline for these tracks. Interestingly enough, I wasn't able to find the right thickness of spline at Lowe's for the screen tight rails, which I did buy at Lowe's. You're supposed to be using a spline that is 175 thousandths of an inch thick, and Lowe's was only carrying the 1/8 of an inch variety. So I ordered these 175 thousandths of an inch splines from Amazon, and they work great. I was able to do the whole thing with one 250-foot roll. I started off using the metal spline tool, but the kit also came with a plastic wheel, and I felt better using this plastic wheel as the project progressed because I felt like there was less risk of it damaging the screens itself. It's a pretty tight location for the metal wheel in the tracks, and I just saw a bit of rubbing on the screen that didn't seem necessary. I also slipped a few times, and I thought that I would have punctured the screen, but I didn't. So this screen material is a little tougher than I thought it would be. Once you have the spline all the way around the screen, you can just cut it off with a razor blade. Now, the order of operations for the splining. I recommend starting the entire operation with hanging the screen with 2 small cutoff pieces on the top track. This will make sure that you have the screen in the appropriate spot and you have enough space on all the sides. After that, I fully spline the right-hand side. Once the right-hand side is done, I position myself on the left-hand side, remove both of the little pieces holding up the top of the screen, and then while pulling to the left with my left hand, I spline the left side. This makes sure that the entire screen is under tension with both sides, the right and the left, splined. Then I like to spline the top next, pulling a little bit of upward pressure or tension on the screen with my left hand as I go. And then lastly, I spline the bottom, pulling down on the screen with my left hand. I found that this allowed me to get all the splines in and not have any ripples or slack in the screens once they're fully splined. All right, this may be the most challenging part. Now I got the sides done. The right side and the left side are connected. I'll be going across the top here, and the top is always the hardest because the leverage just isn't there. But this is going to be even more challenging because I'll have to get it on one side then try to get it on the other so that the spline is all the way in the groove. This is probably the hardest one. It's also up against the wall. So like I just said, this is definitely the hardest section. Halfway through the project, I got out my larger ladder, and that made all the difference. I had a much wider base, and I was able to apply more pressure to the top spline, which made the entire project much easier. Now, it doesn't help that around my patio area, it's all rocked, so those rocks can make it kind of hard to get the ladder in a nice and stable space. This is another win for the larger base ladder, because tipping was less of an issue. One thing I didn't see a lot in other YouTube videos when I was researching this process was a close-up of the corners. So here is a shot showing the 90-degree overlap of the spines. For some reason in my head, I thought these corners would be difficult, but in reality they came together nicely, and you just cut off the excess material after splining. Once all the splines were up, the next step is to put in the plastic trim caps on all of the tracks. I used the same method for cutting them that I did with the tracks themselves, using those aviation snips and keeping the piece of the track that I want to keep on the left-hand side of my cut. With all the tracks up, it's time to install the doors. I got these spring hinges from Lowe's, and they seem to do a good job. I bought 3 packs to do 2 doors so I can put 4 hinges on both doors, and I don't know if that was really necessary, but it just felt like the right thing to do. To prevent binding, I got these doors elevated a little bit off the ground before putting on the hinges. I plan on putting some sweeping style seals on the bottom of these doors to keep the bugs out from getting under the door. Once I had the doors installed, I used some 2x1 pine to create a door stop on the inside along the frame that not only stops the door from overspringing in, but also keeps it flush with the frame when closed. I think I may come back and put some weather stripping on the inside of these door stops to help keep the bugs out from around the door. Once they were installed, I painted them to match the rest of the frame. After that, the rest of the project is really cleaning up the miscellaneous odds and ends. I started off by reinstalling some of the trim pieces that I removed earlier. I went back and painted all these pieces later on so that they matched the rest of the frame. I also caulked around all the transition points between the bricks and the frames. In addition, I put some spray foam inside of the tops of the columns where I had big voids to stop bugs from making nests in there. The previous owner had a Traeger heat plate here, and there was just this big opening under it. So I found a cheap Vever stainless steel door on Amazon and installed it under that induction heat plate. This was pretty simple to do. All I did was make a little frame out of the leftover pressure treated lumber, and then I made some little plywood cutouts on the top and bottom to act as trim. Lastly, I'll be removing and replacing this old fan that was on our patio. This fan has seen better days, and it's also smaller than what we wanted for this area because it gets pretty hot out here in the summer. To replace it, I'm installing a gigantic 72-inch fan that's fairly low profile to provide us with a decent amount of airflow on the patio. I was shocked at how cheap these fans are now on Amazon. This was like 120 bucks, and I'm sure it's not the best quality, but it is rated for outdoor use, and we'll see how it holds up. All right, so we are inside of our enclosed patio area now. There are no bugs in here, which is fantastic. And interestingly enough, whenever I do see a bug in here, because we don't have the seals under the doors yet, a few wasps have actually been able to fly in here. They always get up against the screen itself, and using my soap and water concoction, you can just spray it straight through the screen and get them real easy. They don't fly away or anything. So it's almost like a giant wasp trap in a way that makes them easy to kill. But the idea is not to get any in here. So I will be putting some seals under the doors. I've gone around and caulked all of the mating surfaces between, say, the brick and the frame. I've also put some spray foam in all of the cavities in the corners so that no bugs can get in here. Looking at the cost of the project, that came in at $3,860. Note that a large portion of that was me just being lazy and not liking to paint. We paid a contractor to come out here and paint everything, and that was just about $1,500 for them to do all the painting. For me, it's well worth it because I hate painting, but if you have some patience and want to tape it off yourself, you can save a ton of money just by going and buying the paint yourself. So to highlight a couple of things that I really like, first of all is going to be this backsplash with the vent hood over my sear wood here. We use this smoker a ton for doing pork butts and doing chicken. So having a nice vent hood over it to get the smoke out of the screened area was necessary. In addition, smoke coming off this thing's rising up a ton back here, so having something easy to clean like this tile is great to have behind the smoker itself. One thing I will note is that this is the biggest screen to my right here, and I actually needed to use a larger roll to get this one done. I guess on the larger roll, it's kind of hard to see here, but I saw more imperfections in the screen itself. You know, normally you have this crosshatch pattern, and on the big ones, I saw every once in a while you had like almost a seam going through it where the squares were just a little bigger than the rest of the screen. So I tried to go and cut a different piece to replace this big piece because I thought it was just a one-off thing. But in reality, what it turned out being is that the whole roll had these throughout it. So it doesn't affect the functionality, But if you see it at just the right angle, which you're not gonna be able to see in the camera, there's kind of like a big row going through the crosshatch pattern. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to be doing a larger and a smaller screen, you may have some differences in how they look. If I was doing this again, I'd probably put another vertical here and just go off the same 6-foot roll for the entire project. It would have actually done the whole project and I wouldn't have had to buy that big screen. Big win to this fan, by the way. This thing's a 72-inch fan for 120 bucks off of Amazon. And man, it puts out some air. It can be changed from a bright white to a kind of a soft light, depending on how many times you press the button. One negative of this fan though, and it's probably why it's cheap, is it doesn't hold its settings persistently. So if you turn it off at the switch and turn it back on, you have to go through and turn the fan back on and get the light the way you like it. So just keep that in mind if you're buying one of these cheap fans. For as much as we're out here, you know, we keep it on all day and it puts out a ton of air, so we're pretty happy with it so far. But with these cheap things you get online, we'll see how long it lasts. Just a little note on these doors. The spring hinges do work pretty good. I'll show you here. So the doors do close. I think we may add another spring so that they have a little bit more force on the close. Not so that they close harder, but so that they stay more rigidly closed to the frame. Another way to accomplish that is we could use one of the little hooks that came with the assembly to kind of lock it. But I think I'd rather use another spring in this scenario. So just know if you're putting in screen doors, you may have to play around with the springs and whatnot just to get the close the way that you like it. Probably the last thing we need to do in here is order some new patio furniture. So if anyone has recommendations on types of patio furniture they like, something that's robust and easy to clean, go ahead and drop that in the comment section below. We're shopping for it right now and there's just so many choices, we're kind of overwhelmed. So any suggestions will be greatly appreciated. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button down below. Please consider subscribing to the channel. And this is Redbeard Engineered, signing off.